Hello, everybody. This is Frank with Iron Age News here at the South Florida Conservative News Center. Monday, December 22nd, 7 p.m. We had to put the nose to the grindstone because of so much bullshit being spread out there today. And we picked the one that all of us really don't like the person who has been out there pushing it, and that's Senator Massie, sea sucker in charge in the state of Kentucky, and him picking on poor Pam Bondi, who has enough problems as it is. What you are seeing with this, and I'm going to tell you right up front what this is, and then we'll explain it to you. Senator Massie wants to become president. Senator Massie has nothing to offer the world. Senator Massie possibly was cheating on his dying wife with the woman he's married to now. These are just a few things that have come out in the last million years that disqualify that idiot for being in charge of anything. He shouldn't be in charge of an ants picnic, as they would say back in the old days. And he is so foul and vile that he would use the victims of one of the largest sexual assault cases in the United States history, which is the Jeffrey Epstein sexual trafficking, assault, whatever, to bolster his career and make himself popular. What a piece of shit, right? That is the worst. You're going to use rape victims to bolster your position so that you can run for president to do what? You're not a Republican. You're almost a socialist. You just want the job to exploit it for cash, which is fine. But don't use victims of sexual assault, especially underage victims of sexual assault, to do so. So let's talk a little bit about what the senator has going on here with his charges, what's really happening, and what we can do or not do. Now, before, I guess a year or so ago, when this got popular, before we did we didn't do a video on it, but we did do a long-term format on southfloridaconservative.com on what would have to be done to get the full Epstein files. And as we noted at that point, nobody was prepared to do it, with the disclaimer that the Judicial Watch organization has been doing it the correct way. So when Judicial Watch finally turns over the Epstein files to the public, you will have an actual copy verified of the Epstein files. A lot of people are trying to change history right now, as you see with a certain Hunter Biden going on the Sean Ryan show and saying that this is all nonsense. Honestly, Sean Ryan's jumped the shark and is becoming just as bad as some of these other ones. But hey, it's as they say, it's free speech, but it should be marked as entertainment. All right, so let's get right through this. So over the last few days, the public has been told that Attorney General Pam Bondi could face charges, personal fines, or contempt punishment, or some stern talking tos for allegedly withholding Epstein files from Congress. It's a very dramatic framing. It's also a very misleading framing. And I wish some of the people out there would just, you don't have to be a lawyer for this. You could use Law AI. You could just look it up and find out what's wrong with these statements, okay? There are no criminal charges. There is no realistic enforcement mechanism. There is no viable path to personal punishment for this, all right? What there is a carefully structured political offensive that is using the Epstein case and its victims as leverage for a much larger exposure strategy, which is what I just was talking to about. Let's give you this stuff here. For all of you who are crying, first of all, I am not a fan of Pam Bondi. I think she is outmatched because, as some of you, and I've been saying this since the beginning of Trump's presidency, including the last time, there was somebody online today who was mentioning it. He had a speaker on who said what I had done. Pam Bondi inherited a Department of Justice which she has control of maybe 30% of. She has an FBI that she controls maybe 30% of. When you see Dan Bongino, who used to talk all that shit and everything else, Now, he shouldn't have taken the job because he didn't have it in him. He'd come off cancer, he had the family, millions of dollars. He thought he was going to go in there and it was going to be a walkover. Wrong. You are up against the diehard. You are fighting. It's Berlin, it's 45, and they are defending the Reichstag. All right. Bongino got chewed up. Life is hard. Cash Patel is going the same direction. Pam Bondi also. You only have maybe 30% of the government in those offices functioning on behalf of the American people and on behalf of President Trump's administration. So we'll just put that out there. Okay. Argue with me what you will, but it's about 30%. You have guys that are very Stasi like. See, that was my specialty in the old days was the Stasi. And a lot of stuff reminds you of the boys. Okay. So let's just get into this part here. Uh, what was I saying? Oh yeah. The Pam Bondi thing from Massie is that Pam Bondi violated the law and could be punished for failing to release Epstein related documents. What's being threatened is something called inherent contempt, a rarely used congressional power. Look it up. It's called inherent. Why people don't look it up is beyond me. That has almost no modern enforcement history and would almost certainly be blocked in court. This is not a criminal proceeding. It is not an obstruction case. It is not even a civil penalty regime passed into law with clear enforcement language. In plain English, this is not a serious legal threat. But since Massie has the ear of the mainstream media, which means he's an op, it sounds like he's going to take her out back and shoot her in the head, like trial from Stalin kind of thing. It is, however, a very effective way to create headlines, frame the Justice Department as hiding something, that 30% that we're talking about, and position the accuser, which is Massie, as the lone truth teller standing up against a corrupt system. Now, the Epstein case is uniquely powerful politically because it combines three things. You can say there are more. I'm just going to use three. These are important. First, very real victims, young, younger girls. The volume is high. We don't know where a lot of them landed after this. There was no enforcement. When you are in a position where people are above the law, fucked up things happen. Ask anybody. You could look at the cartels, right? Second, there is real institutional failure there. Third, enormous public suspicion that powerful people escaped accountability. Now, if they were going to go get their freak on, yes, they probably did. Yes, there were probably a lot of people that did it. Was it a honey trap? Probably. Who was it for? Doesn't really matter. It was a honey trap, okay? His particular leverage is going to be gone because he's dead as shit, right? Any politician who invokes Epstein automatically inherits moral authority, meaning I'm going to get to the bottom. You're never going to. Questioning the method becomes risky, which is what I'm doing here because he's an asshole. Senator Massie couldn't find his asshole with all the fingers on both of his hands because it can be framed as questioning the victims themselves. I and many of the people that I work with are advocates for the victims, and we despise pieces of shit that go around and use the victim as a springboard for their career or as armor to protect them from what's going to be the backlash or the onslaught from everybody else. That makes Epstein not just a criminal case, but he is a political force multiplier. Look that term up, it's very important. And that brings us to everyone's favorite turd, Thomas Massie. What Massie's been doing is often described as a transparency push. These are terms that they use in the game. Look it up, put it on your list. I used to tell people, keep a list of terms. If you have not heard the term, write it down, find out what it means. A lot of the terms that you're going to hear are psychological or from the political realm, and you need to know what they are. You don't need to use them, but you should know what they are. People that use them, I think, are usually douchebags anyway. But when you look at the tools he's chosen and the timing, because there's more to him right now, it becomes clear that this is not a narrow accountability effort. Real accountability usually relies on boring tools like court supervised disclosures, independent review, secure oversight access, justification for redactions. That's what judicial review is doing. Oh, by the way, disclaimer, I give judicial review $100 a year personally. I don't know what everybody else does. I give them $100 a year personally. I've never met anybody there. I think they are probably the premier operation right now. It's just me. You can go to whoever you want. So that's out of the way. All right. Massie has largely bypassed that in favor of confrontation, personal threats, and media escalation. That tells you exactly what we're talking about here. He can't handle the truth because he doesn't want to know the truth. He doesn't need to know the truth. Massie isn't running one transparency fight, though. He's running two at the same time. For those of you who don't realize it, um, front number one is the Epstein files in the Justice Department. Okay. This target is the executive branch. It creates pressure. Why is they hiding everything? They're protecting Trump. There's pictures of Trump with his penis out and blah, 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 blah. And it's a little, little chance of a durable legal resolution there. Second, sexual harassment settlements involving members of Congress. He is involved in that. He is trying to get them to turn over the records at the State Department. I guess it's somewhere in the halls of the Congress. They have a record of current and past sitting members who have had to pay off sexual harassment settlements. A lot of times with federal money. Now he's got to go after that. He's using this to go after the legislative branch. Even though settlements are not findings of guilt, public disclosure would be career ending for many of these guys, right? So together, he's got these two fronts create something extremely valuable in politics. He has universal, he has established He's established universal vulnerability. There's nobody on Capitol Hill that's done something dirty that Massie probably can't get at now. DOJ can't rely on Congress for cover. Congress can't rely on DOJ for restraint. Everybody's exposed. The leverage goes to Massie and his masters. So why now and why not under Biden? Okay. Massie served through the entire Biden administration. He didn't launch a comparable money front exposure campaign then. This doesn't require, massive psychoanalysis for his motives. It's about opportunity structure. Under Biden, the institutional alignment was very tight. Media incentives were weaker. Outside disruption carried more risk than reward. He could have ended up killing himself. Under President Donald Trump, the incentives flip. Executive legislative friction is guaranteed. Media attention is going to be off the charts. They have nothing else. They can't talk about all the good stuff that the administration is doing, so we can talk about this. Institutional damage becomes politically useful. He's going to attack the DOJ knowing that that 30% can start to get whittled down because Bondi is probably had to use some part of her 30 to keep the 70 in line to get the documents that she even was able to get. Now, a strategy that would have stalled before under Biden and probably caused his suicide can now accelerate. And the thing is, with the socialists, if they're small timers, they can afford to lose it. There are going to be eggs broken to make an omelet. The Republicans, on the other hand, if you notice George Herbert Walker Bush or George Bush, the younger, is now out there on the side of Afghanistan. I guess because him and his friends started the war, and now they feel bad about things. But the Bush family is making a visual impact recently. They are going to be out there. They are going to be pushing candidates during the midterm elections. And Massie needs to keep them on their toes too, because he cannot have anybody get in the way of him and his prize. He wants to be a power broker. Does he want to be Mitch McConnell? Does he want to be president? Right? He could be both for a while. So this is where the ethical problem comes into focus. All right. Invoking Epstein victims confers a moral authority. Massie is the great legislator out there helping the sick and the sexed up and everything else. Each confrontation elevates the messenger. I am here for these victims, these poor girls. Each promised next revelation holds you waiting for the next day's newspaper. I can't wait to see tomorrow to see what Massey's going to do. But what's missing, there is no serious emphasis on victim restitution. There is no survivor directed disclosure process. There is no focus on prosecutorial repair or long term support. Victims are the justification for Massey's movements, but they do not benefit in any way, shape, or form by this guy doing what he is doing. A disciplined disclosure process would produce clarity, and clarity ends stories. A politicized process produces confusion and inconsistencies, and people are calling it a cover up and all the other bullshit. From a justice standpoint, that's harmful. From a leverage standpoint, it is ideal. Massie is walking around with a 12-incher right now. If your goal is sustained pressure rather than closure, clean resolution is the enemy. That's very true. It's sick to think, like I said, I'm very, so there is a simple test for the sincerity, which if you wanted to look at it and it would be done, which is if success is defined as verified disclosures, protected survivors, enforceable consequences, and institutional reform, the strategy looks one way. If success is defined as headlines, disruption, moral confrontation, I'm the better guy, Trumpler is evil, I'm going to clear the Aegean stables because I'm that kind of guy. My hair products give me strength. The public deserves transparency. The survivors just, they deserve justice. Neither of it is well served at all when abuse becomes a political instrument instead of a moral obligation. And Thomas Massie is walking across the bodies of these victims of rape and sexual assault and everything else. And he is one more victimizer. He is one more handsy motherfucker on the airplane or in the pool with Bill Clinton. He is one more guy getting a massage on his way, he thinks, to either a more senior position in the Senate or, I'm sorry, Congress, or a more senior position where he can run for president because he will have all that blackmail skinny on everybody else. It's a disturbing, disgusting trend, and he is obviously the new master of it. So, congratulations, fuckface. You've done exactly what we expected out of you. You have risen to the lowest point possible. And that's all I have for this guy. I need to go take a shower after talking about him. And otherwise, talk to y'all later on.